Still new at this. Okay. Hello, everyone. It is April 5th. You are attending the SIG Network Policy API meeting. This is CNCF sponsored meeting, so we are being recorded. So please stay nice between everybody and try not to use any curse words. And yeah, let's have a good meeting today. So we'll start by going through some issue triaging. So let's see. I think, did that label PR merge yet, Ricardo, or has it gotten any attention?
Yeah, but come on, Jay, don't do that with me. Yeah, so I've sent the link to you on Zoom chat, and the last issue that we've got, it's 3 days ago. And that's something about bypassing external firewall ports on AWS.
That query for some reason is broken for me here.
Oh, open that on the URL. I've sent to you, not the filter.
Oh, how do I use Zoom here?
Or let me send you the filter. Yeah. So here we go.
Oh, cool. Great. Okay, so yeah, opened 3 days ago. Is this so this is all SIG network. And then we just need to look through the ones that are API or network policy related.
This is actually all SIG network themes, including Qproxy. But the last issue that we've got, and like it's this one, and the other ones, they are all triaged, or at least have someone assign it. So yeah, so this is the only one that doesn't have anyone assigned it, because it doesn't add the area network policy automatically. So we should go through the issues and see if there is some new.
Right. So looking through the issues here, at least in the last week, they're all assigned. So we don't need to worry about them, right? The only ones that seems like it's related to network policy is maybe this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I hadn't read this one. It's strange because it says actually about Hetzner firewall, SSH blocking ports, but kubelet, but I can't see like I have installed some sort of network policy or something like that. Free switch image. Oh, damn. Micro C. Do we have anyone like with knowledge with SIP?
Yeah, I've never heard of any of this.
VoIP.
Free switch on Kubernetes.
Me neither.
SIP is always fun, the protocol from hell.
Yeah, exactly.
I built a SIP load balancer a long time ago. That was not fun.
Yeah, so I guess this is not related to network policy, Andrew. So because it's like it says about Docker Compose, host network, kubelet. So I guess we can leave this for SIG network triage, or maybe we can take a look out of the meeting. So I guess we can move forward.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Cool. Okay. That sounds good to me. It doesn't look relevant. And then I didn't see any other ones. So cool. Well, that's a good thing.
I mean, I think you can make a if someone wants it to be policies, please fucking send the policies. Like I put up DDDD, not saying what they are, and I still can make calls. Like, yeah.
Right. Exactly. Cool. So let's keep moving through this. The two main things on the agenda today, obviously, are keep talking about V2, and then also on a separate thread, I just wanted to see if there was another cluster scope network policy update. We can do either or first. Whoever wants to hop in. Anyone? Vinay, have you had time to talk to the rest of your team about owning this?
Yeah, so I did start a discussion, and there is like a as you know, in like a really large company, I'm having some consensus issues. So there is like so just give me like if you can indulge me for like give me a little bit more time. I think I'll try to come back with a more definitive answer. So there is I mean, so as you, I don't know if you guys know this thing or not, but Govind, myself, and Satish have been involved on the cluster network policy, CNP. And maybe, so they're saying like, well, can we like look into that first before we jump on the V2 bandwagon? So again, it's all the question of like in the math of resources, how much time we have. So in the meantime, having said that, I don't want to hold people hostage. If anybody wants to run with it, please go ahead and do that. And I and myself and my team from Google, as and when resources get freed up, happy to jump on.
Okay. Yeah, no worries at all. Totally understand you guys have a lot on your plate right now. I think if you guys haven't been introduced yet, Andre Fedette is also on this call. He's another Red Hatter who is kind of hopping on this effort with me to help out. So I think we still have some more discussion to do offline, but we definitely might be able to by next week have an idea if we can take a more central
Andre,
role.
so we got a new person. That's cool. Andre,
Hey. Yeah, how y'all
Hey.
doing? Hello.
what's up?
Yeah, so we might be able to, kind of take a more architecting role in this, or even, further help divide the work with you, Vinay, if that ends up, that you can't quite commit.
Absolutely. And I think, yeah. As I said, like enough. If you guys have any ideas, Andrew, just go ahead and start it, and we'll be happy to join as and when we get freed up.
Definitely. Yeah. No, sounds good to me.
I appreciate you handing the baton over and being open about that, Vinay, because a lot of times it's not clear whether somebody's owning something or not. So that's great.
Hi, Andrew.
Yeah.
I spoke on mute before. Long time.
Hi, Per.
Yeah. Hey, Per, how you doing?
Oh, maybe I should turn on the camera as well.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah, I figured that was you when I heard you talking.
Cool. Well, that's good to know. And, I think too, like this is going to be a large V2 it's going to be one maybe group owning a document and then pushing everyone to cooperate, right? This is not something that's ever going to get passed or move anywhere without the whole consensus of this group, to the point that we can, produce a document that is then presented to the larger group. But we have a lot of work obviously to do before it can even begin thinking about that.
And have you seen that we are on the correct timing, right, folks? Because probably cluster scope and network policy is going to be on V2 API also. There was a discussion last SIG network meeting that it cannot be probably inside networking Kate's IO/V1 alpha 1 because the API is already stable.
So you're saying that we would have to build cluster scope network policy under the network policy umbrella?
No, I'm saying that we will have to build. We are kicking off a new V2 API for both cluster scope network policy and network policy V2. Okay. So it's going to be we are probably going to have like a lot of space to work on new things.
So Ricardo, when you say version 2 of cluster scope policy, I don't think we even have a version 1, right? I mean, we're in the process of defining that.
Yeah, this is the discussion that has run on the last SIG network meeting. I guess Tim Hawking was going to talk with Jordan Legit because there is some, let me see if I can find it. Gobind was there. I guess he also listened about that. But there was some discussion about, because as we already have networking KXIO/V1, we cannot have a newer Kubernetes networking Kubernetes IO/V1 Alpha 1 again, because the V1 Alpha 1 got already ripped off from the code. So this might get some sort of conflict with client Go and other parts, but this was like something that even Tim didn't know how to answer. So he was going to ask for Jordan, I guess.
I see.
I think I joined the temporary for the SIG network meeting last Thursday. Didn't Tim say that he already talked to the API machinery guys? And I remember his own words was that they admit this is sort of like a problem, but they didn't know how to fix it easily, something along those lines. So
yeah, it was something like that. I was like,
yeah,
but yeah. Good call, yeah.
I mean, I guess we've already presented once, right? Cluster scope network policy to the networking group, and they gave a bunch of feedback to you guys. And
both
now,
all of them are sort of like CRD spec related and the semantics related. They didn't really look closely enough to the group until we opened up the cap officially, and Antonio stepped out and say, hey, this is not going to work. You can't put a V1 Alpha 1 version on the stable API group. So that's when we came to sort of like figure out this is a problem.
totally. I mean, and regardless of the API blockages though, I mean, can't we just do everything with CRDs for now? And I think once you have a prototype working, people will be more pressured to find a solution to these API problems rather than just say.
Yeah, like Yang, what do you think? You're Antria, right? So if we did a CRD with the CNP, you think y'all would adopt that? Because then we would at least have one canonical implementation. I mean, adopt it as like, help us implement some of it.
I'm not too sure about that. The answer to that, I feel like sure, and a CRD implementation is easy to accomplish, especially in Chat, because I assume the point of we bringing cluster network policy to the upstream is that most CNIs, I think, as long as the CNI supports network policy, I would say most CNIs has already got their own cluster network policy implementations, and there are nuanced differences. And the reason why we try to bring up a cap on upstream is that we wanted to sort of like have a unified thing for every CNI to implement, no matter which CNI they are. So having sort of like a CRD sort of like contradicts to that, because as I said, most of CNI
because you already have a CRD. Yeah, you already have a CRD.
So it doesn't really make sense to have another CRD and say, okay, we're proposing the CRD upstream, then every other CNI can say the same thing, right? Like, let's make our cluster policy standard. So,
no, totally. But that CRD would be agreed on by this group, right? I mean, that's the whole.
Yeah.
That's actually a good counterpoint, right? Is that, the step, exactly. It's that this would be a CRD. There was people at Red Hat and different companies that actually said, yeah, this is valid.
That's sure.
I'm just trying to think about how we can get past this kind of roadblock, right? So the problem is we can't add cluster scope network policy, an unstable feature, to a stable channel, right? So, I mean, it's either you go to a V2 and we kind of roll it out while we're rolling out network policy V2, or there's another hack, right? Those are the only ways forward right now. And there's no pressure on anyone to really do it unless we put it on.
The thing of the CRD is that I agree totally with Yang that we actually are proposing to the upstream because everybody. Otherwise, we could use like the CRD from Untree or from Signal or from Calico. But the CRD approach is what they are following with the gateway API as well. And what they are doing actually is creating a CRD that's under the Kubernetes umbrella, but on a different API group that's called x-kubernetes.io or something like that. So it's owned by the community. And then they are going to propose to move that to inside the API. Let me see if I can find and show that to you, just to clarify to you. Because
I looked at the gateway API once. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Because I know you guys have already done a ton of work on that, so it would be a shame for it just to stall out because we can't get past this.
Yeah, sure. I think that's a really valid point. I'll do some research and bring it up with Abhishek, who is also, he's on paternity leave, so he only joins our Thursday meetings for the cluster network policy thing. I'll definitely bring this up for discussion on our regular Thursday meetings.
And sorry, I just want to be super clear. Like, are we talking about network policy v2 here or the cluster scope network policy? Because it feels like they're getting mangled.
The cluster scope policy, because Goben, if you see the recent comments on the cap, there is one point that Antonio raised, like the first few comments about whether we can make the cluster network policy a v1 alpha 1 into the network policy .io because it's already v1. So it doesn't allow us to add a new v1 alpha 1 version of CRD into the same group. So this was somewhat confirmed by Tim Hawking, I think, by last Thursday. But they didn't provide a sort of like clear solution on how we're going to go work around this problem yet.
I see. Okay, so we're just thinking whether we need to use the v2 nomenclature just so we can actually get the CRD upstreamed or something.
Not exactly. I don't think this cluster network policy have to be tangled with network policy v2. It's just that we need to use another API endpoint, just like what the gateway API is doing, rather than try to squeeze it into the existing networking.io API group.
Got it. That makes sense.
If my understanding is correct.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry, I was just trying to make sure that we're not like, marrying the two fates of like the v2 discussion and the cluster network policy, because I think we've already made a ton of progress and we should get that moving as quickly as possible for cluster network policy.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't think they should be tied together at all. I just think some things you're going to have to do to get the cluster scope network policy in is going to apply very much to any V2 work we do moving forward. So it's good to kind of think about both right now.
Yeah.
And I don't want
on that subject. Sorry, I'm just trying to understand. Like, I'm reading through the notes and stuff as well. For the V2 conversation, what are some of the, or maybe this is still work in progress, so that's totally fine. But I just wanted to understand, what are the main goals of V2 policy? What are we trying to solve? And why does that necessitate a V2 necessarily?
So I think some of the guiding principles we started discussing last week, a lot of people weren't here, and there is still not a clear doc that is owned by anyone that is describing everything. That's kind of our first goal, is to get a doc answering all those questions very succinctly, right? The main reason I think we kind of all started agreeing on V2 was, the existing implementation doesn't have a lot of flexibility, right? And anyone else can hop in here. But I think there's some features specifically on the docket, such as service selectors, service account selectors. Those are the two I can think of off my head.
Node selectors,
right? That, it was the constant battle for those features. Do we go back and we try to edit and squeeze in these features to the existing network policy spec, or do we, look into a V2. And that, along with the fact that there were some grievances against how it works right now. For instance, the fact that all pods can talk to every other pod until any policy applied, and then at that point they're cut off by default. Like that implicit behavior should be explicitly defined by a network policy. So that's like a couple of the reasons. So yeah, that's what I think. If anyone else has anything to add there.
Got it.
The default behavior, right? The default, the hidden behavior that Jay always complain about.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say about that. That's kind of the things that are pushing us towards a V2. Now, you know, with a V2, there's also all the complicated things that go with it, right?
Yeah, and that's really the conversation that I'm trying to have in my head, and you know, it's good to have this sort of in the community as well, because if there's like you know, major sort of change in direction or some such, or like, oh, we're doing, I don't know, L7 policy, I'm going to throw that grenade in there. So you know, like maybe then it could be like, yeah, sure, like, you know, let's do a V2, and then there's a significant change in sort of the motivation and the scope of what this API does. But if it's you know, if it's mostly changing some of the semantics to make it more obvious or what have you, or adding some convenience selectors, I mean, you know, like for example, cluster network policy is a huge effort on its own. You know, we've been working on it for several months, you know, across several different, you know, members, and like you could have almost argued that, oh, cluster number policy almost deserves like, or will force number policy into the V2 land, and we have to come up with a new API and define a V2 version of it. And even that we were able to sort of like, you know, ignore or slash, you know, work around, I should say, you know, in the V2 conversation, and have it be interoperable. So that's kind of the reason I'm wondering, like, what is the sort of ground truth and the principle on which we're basing the decision of coming out with the V2 API? And if it's well understood, you know, it would be very well, like, it would be worth our time to, like, you know, do that before we jump into it.
Yeah, and you know, we had brought this up a long time ago, and then it came up again 2 meetings ago, and that was the meeting where I think a lot of us agreed on, you know, pushing forward with it. As you can see in the agenda, we were talking about service selectors, and then all of a sudden it was like, well, screw this, let's start talking about V2.
Let's talk about V2. Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to also just remember this one also, Andrew. I don't know if I suggest, yeah, I think I suggested it when you were here before, but there is one other thing that for the V2 stuff, which we could do, which I think requires, which I think the cool thing about it is it requires absolutely no CNI knowledge whatsoever, which is we could build a set of common CRDs which express the V2 semantics, but then generate under the hood V1 policies.
Right.
And then we would prove out a V2 API which worked on any CNI provider. And, you know, I know Matt Fenwick has done some of this already, right? He's demonstrated that you could do some of this.
I mean, that might work on the
That's
CNI
messy.
provider.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be generating with V1 policies, right?
yeah.
So Matt's done it. Matt's got this really crazy API that he built. So it's doable, right? I'm not saying it's like, it's going to work for everything. And Gobin's team already has that network policy L7 operator thing too, right? So we've got pieces of this.
Yeah, I mean, we have a egress firewall that can operate on DNS names, right? But I mean, that's kind of the L7 thing. But you know, that a bunch of questions arise when you say, okay, we can take. Anyway, I think that's a day 2 conversation. Yeah. We need to unite on the fact, like, and I thought we did this 2 weeks ago, but now I'm hearing a little bit of contention. And, you know, I've had my own second thoughts again after thinking about it for a while.
So when you guys say layer 7, do you mean just the URL, or are you also looking further into, I mean, anytime you do that in reality, you're looking at the layer 7 proxy, right? Because you cannot assume that that you have the data.
It came up last week, and I don't think layer 7.
My understanding is that you know, Gobin and his team has a F2DM policy repo, and I don't think it's truly L7. It's just that
nope, it's not.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's just, you know, you can specify a FQDN in the policy, and under the hood, it translates the policy to IP addresses
For
using DNS resolution.
for the IP block then.
I mean, from an
Yes.
API,
Okay.
I feel like from an end user perspective, it is an L7 policy. Now, from an implementation,
Well,
whatever, we could argue about that all day, but
Does it update if DNS is updated?
oh, I
Or-
don't know.
It does.
Yeah, it has
It
a
does.
refresh.
Okay, yeah, that's
It does.
but that's an external server that can keep track of the. That's a pretty cool service.
Correct. Oh yeah. Well, yes. Thank you. It's actually open source on GitHub, and
Yeah.
it's free for all of us to, you know, add more stuff to it. So,
Mhm.
but yes. Go ahead.
I was just saying, we demoed it once at one of the, if you want to see one of the YouTube recordings from the last
Yeah.
couple of meetings, Per, it was actually, yeah, kind of cool. It just worked.
But I think the only thing I'm trying to get at is, you know, obviously a V2 conversation is great and welcome. I just want to understand, you know, from my perspective, like what the sort of motivation, the prime motivation for that is, and like, you know, whether V2 is the only answer, because with a new API, as I'm sure everybody understands, it comes like the load of educating customers, migration to the new API, and interop with the, you know, old API, you know, so on and so forth. And I'm just wondering, like, you know, hopefully the value that we're adding is worth that effort.
Mhm. I mean, and you can mitigate all that, right, by failing open or failing closed with V2. And we spent a lot of time talking about that last week, right? I mean, if you apply
Right.
a V2 policy to a V1 controller, what happens? Is it going to work? Is it only going to work for some half of the feature set of V2? I mean, it's all questions we started to ask last week. I think it boils down to the fact, look, we have these new features we want to implement with network policy. We also have some grievances against how network policy is right now. What's the way forward? I mean,
I think there is no, I think overall, if we're all honest with ourselves, we're at a point where we just can't do certain things without doing all sorts of weird copy paste nonsense with V1, right? Like some kind of weird, like having a 20, you know, meeting debate about adding a single field every time we want to add one because of this closed open nonsense that you mentioned, Andrew, right? That's kind of where we kind of all just, it just, the cognitive load at this point to add a new feature without breaking the V1 API is to the point when it's beyond any of our mortal brains to
and
do.
now
It's not that we want a V2 API for no reason.
yeah.
Right?
And now there's also one other path that I was thinking about that and some people like Dan Winship pointed out to me. I mean, Dan Winship is obviously knows a lot about all this. And he, you know, said to me, like, the way it is right now makes no sense for some of the default behaviors. And he doesn't like how network policy is right now. And his idea was, you know, forget about breaking V1, forget about a relation to V1, V2. His idea was you already have a cluster scope network policy in the works. Why don't you make a new object and call it, like, I don't know, application network policy, right? So then you have one that's handled by administrators more so, and then another that's handled by application developers. Whereas like right now, network policy is mainly handled by both, but application people can still go in and mess stuff up.
So I can ask a stupid question.
Mhm.
So all this stuff, I mean, a while ago, so it's about nested namespaces, which will always obviously break complete havoc with all the selectors.
Jeez.
So, so if someone pushes in network, I mean, nested namespaces, right? Then anyway, all the policies needs to be redone. So, well,
Is that ever going to happen? Nested,
I don't know.
I haven't heard about nested namespace.
Yeah.
What is a hierarchical namespace?
Hierarchical, yeah, that's what I meant. But I mean, if that comes in, then all of a sudden you have, even if it's just one level, right? The whole label mechanism becomes much more complicated, and the policies are the stuff that I see will be hit hardest, because your pod definitions and so on. Yeah, well, you do it always from the relative point of the namespace, whereas the policies are. So the application policies could then work within sort of the top namespace. But I mean, if you do cluster namespaces, cluster rules, we will probably more work on the top between the different tenants namespaces. So
Yeah, that's a whole, I mean, that's a good point too, right? Of what if something else changes? You
yeah,
know,
so I have no clue. I mean, I can understand that someone wants it because you want to be able to for your customers to not have to care about what they call their namespaces, which is obviously the case now, right? That they have to be all unique, and so on. So
I would say nested namespaces though is a feature that is probably less likely to get in
yeah,
than
so
service selectors.
yeah, so yeah, so I mean, but something like that will break will break everything that has to do with policies, right? And that's probably why it never will come in that case. Or you would have to have a simple rule to apply them.
Yeah.
So that it will still work.
Yeah, no, totally. So yeah, I mean, I think the question this group needs to come together on and agree to is, do we want V2? Do we start putting resources into it? Or is there another way forward? That's the only two options. And I think, you know, whether it takes, how long it takes is up to the group, but we need to come together, decide on that and move forward instead of revisiting it every 3 weeks and coming up with a different conclusion. Right?
Yeah. So if we were to do a thing where is the debate whether or not we should do a V2, is that a debate? Or is that just a kind of like a shocking revelation? What, I guess, Govind, I guess you're the one that brought it up. So what do you want this to be a debate, or do you want it to just be like a?
No, I don't want it to be a debate. If I think I was just looking for like the main reason or reasons as to why V2 has to be the answer. Like literally, that was the only question,
Okay.
and I didn't see it in the notes, so that's why I was asking.
We don't take very good notes here sometimes.
No, yeah.
Let's do this. Let's do this right. So how about this, Andrew? We can start a mailing list thread and literally make this an actual thing of, you know, look, we're at the point where to address Gobin's question, because he's bringing up a good point here, which is that we never really, I don't think, made this case explicit. We just kind of all agreed that we were
Totally.
bored of, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. You know, Gobin brought up some really great questions.
So, okay, Gobin, we hear you loud and clear, and you are very correct. We just kind of got lazy and decided we didn't want to do V1.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think I'm very enthused about the idea of like having a network security API that makes sense. So don't get me wrong. I think it's all good. I just wanted to make sure that we have all the principles identified before we, you know, jump in, you know, head first.
Gotcha.
That was the only.
Yeah, I agree.
Somebody else would have said it if you hadn't said it first. So I'm glad you were the bad guy to say it, because guess what? Somebody would have said it, and at least we did it within the group first. So now we got to put it in writing. No, you're totally right. So
and I'm
shout out to
definitely-
Gobind for standing up and saying that, right? Like that's important to be able to get us out of this groupthink thing. So let's get this done right. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if we can get that written down, that'll be crucial, because that's been my kind of push for the last 2 weeks is, you know, regardless of what we want to do, let's get it written down, documented so that it's there for anyone to see. And we haven't done a good job of doing that yet. So cool. And I mean, regardless, we need to figure out a way forward for these new features.
So how about I start a little Google Doc and we can work on this asynchronously, add links and evidence as to why we need this V2. And Andrew, I'll just share it with you. So and Ricardo and whoever else wants to just reach out and we can add this. So
from what I understood from you before, right? I mean, a large part to not do it in V1 is the struggle every time you want to change something. So if you would define it if it would be a V2, at least you would have you would be able to add attributes and all this stuff without much of discussion. And then you can have a discussion at the end, whether you go V2 or not. And if it's not, well, then you know what needs to go in V1.
Well, we have historical, I think we have historical stuff. We just need to do the grunt work to dig up the GitHub issues, dig up the meetings, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So we
all
can
right.
just put the bullets in a mailing list thread and
A
say,
lot of
look,
it's right here.
it's all, yeah,
I mean, this is like answers a lot of the questions, right? That,
Yeah.
And this document's from what?
all the way from 2016 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we
and,
have
and
this.
the end
yeah.
of this was like, yeah, we need a V2 basically, but like, it's
Too
gonna
much
be,
work.
it's
Yeah.
gonna be impossible. But then now we've gotten to the point where augmenting V1 also seems equally or more so impossible.
Yeah. One of the real interesting things Tim said, and I dug this up in the mailing list once, and I got to jump after this, but he said the biggest mistake the network policy API ever made was, I wonder if at some point I'm going to get in trouble for always quoting him, but I like dig up his old quotes. So like, but like, yeah, he said this and it was like real interesting. He's like, well, the biggest mistake we made is not writing policies against the service, right? Not making that a first class principle, right? So, yeah, we're going to have to write this up. It's going to be a little work. I feel like Andrew, maybe
Did you say
since
the
we're all-
servers or the services?
services,
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
right? I feel like okay.
If you can
Yeah.
start a doc, Jay, that would be awesome. And we'll just,
Okay.
we need to like everything Gobind asked today, we need to have like solidly written down. If someone comes in and says it, it's like,
Yeah. Because
Um,
because a lot of people are going to say the same thing, right?
yeah,
Hey,
100%.
can I suggest that you just put the link in the minutes here, and then anybody can get at it that wants it?
Yeah. Definitely.
But yeah. So
Sounds
like,
good.
like I said, I missed a lot. Is there anything in here now about the?
One thing, because I got to drop, Andrew, can you just make sure you write in like bold, like next week, justify V2, right? Like that's our thing for next week. We got to do.
Is there anything in here now how to handle sidecars and that shit when people just dump tunnels into the pods? Or is there?
Somebody asked for that there in that link Andrew has. Somebody
Yeah.
did actually talk about something like that.
At least to be able to serve someone, okay, these are the rules you're supposed to follow, so you can have well-behaved sidecars. But
check out this GitHub repo pair. It has
Uh,
everything, every idea that anybody has ever proposed about network policies that we ever had, and it actually has votes
Okay.
for them. People voted on them, so yeah.
all right, I will have a look.
Cool. Great. Awesome. Well, I think that's pretty much all we have. You know, and on the same token, should we set, we don't even need to set a date, but I think our goal over until it's done is just to be like firmly everyone in this meeting all in on V2, or if someone has a better idea to please bring it up. Like we still want to hear other ideas, but at some point we have to move forward with one or something else, right? With V2 or.
So I would guess that makes a big difference if you're someone that's providing sort of the technology, or if you're a user of the technology. If you provide, you're probably all for a V2 because it's easy to add in your stuff. If you're a big user, maybe not so much.
Right, and that can also be fixed or annulled by how we design V2 in the sense that
Can be backwards compatible.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's open questions that will need to be decided down the line for sure.
Well, at least I know exactly where I am. Sort of, I'm very much on the provide side. It's
no, that's a good point. Cool. Great. Well, that's all I have. Does anyone have anything else? Any other questions for today or comments, concerns?
like I said before, at some point discuss so the world I live in, multi-networking is a fact. Sort of that there is many networks, many network attachments, many addresses, and it's one thing what happens in the pod, right? How you sort it out, and there's another thing how the Kubernetes framework can handle it. And I started out believing that it couldn't work together. I changed my mind over the last 6 months. I think that Kubernetes, I call it from the semantics and the base, has really no problems with multi-networking. Okay, there's certain things that's only provided on the first interfaces, but it wouldn't have to. Like network policies, there's nothing in the policies that really talks about an interface. It just says that this group of pods can or cannot talk with this other set of pods. I mean, you have the ingress and the egress, and it says nothing about which interface it come out. For the service is a bit is sort of that there's an assumption that is a first, but it would be very easy to say same thing. That I want to have a set of addresses that works on this network that should be able to load balance over another set of over another interface or network, so to speak. There's nothing in the semantics of how things are set up that stops that. So telcos and all of these that wants to run their 5G stuff, because 5G now is specified that it's going to use containers. So everyone has had their call it infrastructure as a service VNFs, and now they're going to move it over to containers. First, they think they can just take them and run them. That will never work. But I mean, even if you rewrite it, it's going to be multi-network, and people is going to have to use VRFs in the containers and so on and sort that shit out. But what you do in the container doesn't really, Kubernetes as such doesn't care, right? Same thing with the constant network orchestration. Kubernetes is not set up to handle it and should never do. Kubernetes you can define a network, you can match it to another network that's outside of Kubernetes system, and then you can make attachments. That's all it should do. If someone wants to do a router, I mean, we have it. It should not be some call it OpenStack like interface in Kubernetes. It will never work because it's in the hand of the call it service provider that provides this to do all this stuff. So it needs to be separated. And this is pushed now in Anuket and so on, and Linux Foundation, and they try to build reference models and all this sort of shit. But so that's where I'm back here to sort of try to see how can we do this. But I do think sort of that it should be possible for someone like me to write network policies that works over multi-networking. It's simple to do if you do it from the beginning, you think of it. And as long as it doesn't destroy, or I shouldn't say destroy, it doesn't change the semantics for someone that doesn't use these things, it shouldn't be a problem. And sort of see if the Kubernetes community is starting to get open to sort of see that multi-networking is problematic, because any multi-homing, you never know which interface it goes out. But if someone knows how to handle that, at least the framework shouldn't sort of stop it. So right now, I mean, we have call it the ETH0 network, and then we have the CNIs all doing all sort of shit, and every CNI does it differently, and it just doesn't make any sense. We have annotations sitting in the pods that's specified by network plumbing groups and Malthus and so on, and it's there. So I think that same thing when you discuss V2 here, if we're going to discuss V2 for networking at some point, those things should go in there as well. But it needs to be done in a way that's not changing the base semantics of Kubernetes. And if it changes something, it should be by extending it for those specific use cases, not changing what's there if it's not needed.
No, definitely. I mean, you make good points. That it's obviously a big problem.
Well, you work in a company that also has a lot of telcos as your users, right?
Yeah, for sure. See it all the time. But definitely. I did just want to, before we hop off, Prasad, I just saw your chat. For sure. If you want to give us do you want to give us a quick introduction of who you are and why you're interested in joining this group?
Yeah, hi, my name is Prasad. This is first call I'm joining. And, I work at Juniper, and, I'm one of the Contrail, initial members, if you know about Contrail. And I worked in OpenStack and those areas. So right now, we are started looking into Kubernetes areas. So, I started looking into the network policies and, wanted to help in this area.
Cool. Great.
Yeah, and also Nadim also joined along with me. He's also one of my colleague there. So we wanted to actively participate and, start helping you folks and, shape up the things on the network policies area.
Definitely. Well, great to have you both. Hi, nice to meet you. Great to have you both, Prasad and Nadim. Thanks for hopping on. So as you can tell, we're in a period of, a lot of new work coming down the pipe, figuring out how best to implement it. So
yeah,
it's a good time to hop on.
Thank you. And is there a way, what's the starting point? Like, I wanted to get onto the notes, whatever happened earlier, maybe just wanted to quickly browse through, so that, we'll get a little more, clarity on some of the areas which you are talking.
Yeah, definitely. Our agenda has a lot of stuff that's going on. That's probably the best central place for notes, I would say, right, Ricardo? It should contain most.
So
of the
sorry,
links.
I was looking to another screen, Andrew.
Oh no, you're fine. I was just Prasad was just asking for best ways to kind of read up on what we're doing and where we're getting started, and I just pointed him to the agenda.
Yeah, let me hold on. So this is I am bad at computers. I should sell coconuts on the beach. Okay, so here it is, our agenda, and everything that we've discussed in the past is already here, but now we are mostly focused on discussing about the evolution of the network policy. Besides what we already achieved. So we achieved, I guess it were some small goals, but really asked by the community about the port ranges and selecting namespace by name. But now we are moving forward to actually extend the network policy API to some more selectors that we cannot do already. And we are hitting some problems like fail open versus fail close. And also discussing about the cluster scoped network policy, which Yang is much more aware than me and Vinay. But there is some documents as well on the header of this document. I'm looking at this document and I'm forgetting that I'm not sharing with you. I'm sorry, it's my screen. But anyway, it's on the header of the document about the cluster scoped network policy discussion. Some slide deck that they made, some old discussion as well. So, and you can feel free to ping me on Slack if you need to. Yeah.
Thank you, Ricardo, and thank you, Andrew, for giving the
So
information.
are you in the same group as Sukhdev?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, no worries. Great to have you on board. Great. So I think we have kind of a way forward. I will keep in contact with Jay and post the link to that Google Doc in the agenda. Hopefully next week we can come in with some more principles written down to kind of forward us into the next discussion on V2. And, if anyone has time, I can continue as well to do research on, are there other ways forward besides V2 and besides just extending V1?
Yeah,
that's where we're at right now.
I am pretty calm this week. So if you want to ping me, we can do some research together. I can help you. Because I have like emptied my PR queue, so I can take a look into that. Yeah.
Cool. I can't quite say the same yet, but every week's like that.
Yeah.
So you have to make time.
Otherwise, I'm looking at the queue proxy, the cupping thing as well.
Right. Okay. No worries. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. On that note, we'll give you 6 minutes back for your day. I hope you have a good day and talk to you next week.
Thank you, folks.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.